So now that we've talked about how wind is created in the first place, let's talk about a specific kind of mid-sized wind called a sea breeze. The next chapter we're going to talk about different kind of mesoscale winds like this, or small-scale winds, kind of sea breezes. But let's see how it works with regard to the high and the low, and wind being basically air being pushed from a high to a low. And actually, sea breezes have to do with differences in temperature. And the next slide has a picture of the formation of a sea breeze, and it will hopefully make even more sense. But as we talk about these different types of winds, kind of small scale, I guess you'd call them, small scale winds, the name in front of the wind, for instance, sea in front of sea breeze, that's the direction it's blowing from. So in this case, it's blowing from the sea onto the land. So I mentioned it has to do with temperature. So one of the things that we learned earlier in this course is that large bodies of water, like the oceans, the seas, tend to take a long time to heat up, and once they're warm, water takes a long time to cool down relative to the land. So keep that in mind. What happens is that during the day, and actually I think I have about 3 p.m., we kind of see the maximum effect here. About 3 p.m. the sun has heated both the land and the large body of the water, the sea. And so, as I said, the water or the sea is more stubborn to heat up. So basically what happens is we end up with kind of and you're going to see on the next slide, so I hate to kind of give it away. Okay, there's my land. Here's my sea, or my ocean. Okay, so about 3 p.m. basically we have, this is hot down here, and this is cooler. Okay. And if this is hot, then we end up with basically a low pressure here at the Earth's surface. And so about 3 p.m. we're going to end up, and if this is cooler, it's going to be kind of a relatively high pressure down there anyway. And voila, there is your sea breeze. Right? Okay, and it peaks about 3 p.m. But honestly, a little closer to home to us anyway, here in the Midwest, is something called a lake breeze. So if you've ever visited the windy city, Chicago, you know that the winds can actually really intensify in the late afternoon, about 3 p.m. And what you're ending up with basically is not a sea or an ocean, but Lake Michigan, which is just humongous. It's a beautiful thing to see. So Lake Michigan tends to stay cooler relative to the city of Chicago. With all that concrete especially, we can definitely get warm on Chicago versus cooler over the sea. So you end up with a low pressure on the shoreline of Lake Michigan or Chicago, and a high pressure out there, the cooler waters, and so there you go. You end up with what we call a lake breeze. Remember, if you want to know where the wind's coming from, look at the word before it. So this is coming from the lake, same thing. Not bad. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the pictures here. Pictures worth 1,000 words. So here is, you can see these are actually isobars, kind of drawn, looking at the vertical profile of the atmospheric pressure. And so what you're seeing here is that the land is heating up. The land is heating up, and we're ending up with kind of a lower pressure. Okay, this, or I should say this isobar of 1008 is kind of moving up, so we have kind of a lower pressure there. About 3 p.m. we have our kind of our exaggerated low pressure, just like I was telling you, here over the land, over Chicago, and then out here over the sea or the ocean or Lake Michigan, we have generally a high pressure because it's generally cooler over there. Now notice what's happening at upper elevations. At upper elevations we end up with, over the land we have a relatively high pressure, and out over the sea we have a relatively low pressure. So at upper elevations, and it kind of ends up creating what we call a cell. It goes this way, descending, this way, ascending. But the bottom line is this is how a sea breeze forms. So now a land breeze, remember I said look at the word before the wind. In this case, if it's a land breeze, that means it's coming from the land. Going where? Well, going out to that large body of water, whether that's Lake Michigan or a sea or an ocean. So land breezes occur because at night the land tends to cool down more quickly. And here's my land over here. kind of switched figures, didn't I? And here is the sea or the ocean or Lake Michigan. So the land cools down more quickly. Yeah, that's what I want to say. And so it ends up, we kind of end up with a cool, remember cool air, that's supposed to be cool. Cool air tends to have kind of a high pressure. And down here, the ocean or the sea or Lake Michigan tends to kind of retain its heat at night. And so this is warm, okay? And then at the surface anyway, we end up with a relatively low pressure. And again, air is the movement, wind is the movement of air from a high to a low always. So this outgoing breeze or land breeze occurs at night.